So shake body out. You can stand up, dance around, stretch, whatever feels good. And get your body ready to dive in. We're going to be doing some identity and leadership work today. And that brings up a lot of stuff. And then as you're ready to settle back in to your seat, we're going to take a moment to drop into our bodies, to drop into the moment, to drop into the intention of what you desire to receive. So as you are ready to settle in, go ahead and close the eyes. That feels comfortable for you. And begin to bring awareness to the rhythm of the breath. Feeling the sensation of the inhale opening your body. And allowing the exhale to release and relax your body. And bring awareness to how your body feels in this moment. What's even moved for you since yesterday? Notice any shifts and expansions. Notice any tightness, any opening. And simply acknowledge and observe. And then on your next exhale, envision roots extending from the base of the spine, dropping down into the earth, going deeper and deeper down, all the way to the core of the earth. And from this core, allow yourself to inhale that earth energy up through your roots, sensing them flowing through the toes, coming up the calves and the thighs, rising up into the hips and the belly, coming up into the chest, the neck, the jaw and chin, rising all the way up into the crown. Just feeling that earth energy grounding itself in, grounding you into the present moment. And then on your next inhale, inhale light through the crown center. Feel it flowing through the crown, opening the third eye, coming down into the neck, the shoulders, and the chest. Feeling it opening and expanding the belly and the hips. And then traveling down the thighs and calves, all the way out through the toes. And feel this light emanating from within you as it opens and expands your body even more. And just notice what it's like to hold this expansion and this groundedness in your body at the same time. Noticing your capacity to hold the both and here. Just letting that fully drop into your body. And then focusing on the heart center and breathing into it. I want you to take a moment to anchor into what you desire to receive today. How has day one opened you, expanded you, challenged you? And what's wanting to emerge here on day two? What wants to be ignited here? And just take a moment to anchor in that intention and desire, holding it in the heart. And then sealing it there on the next exhale. And then coming back into connection with your feet on the earth. Feeling the breath moving through you. Go ahead and open your eyes and come back into the space. Welcome. So happy to be with you here. I'd love for folks to even just take a moment, if you were here for day one, if you listen to the replay, just share in the chat what's opened up for you here as you step into day two. What are your intentions for day two? And I encourage all of you to interact with one another in the chat, as well as in the Facebook community, get to know one another. This is such a great place for all of you to connect with each other. And for the purposes of asking me any questions or receiving guidance from me, I encourage you to write the things that you want to ask me down on a piece of paper and save it to the end. Put it in the chat at the end when I prompt everyone for the Q&A session, because I won't be able to track everyone's questions as we go through the actual live portion of the event, but I will do a Q&A at the very end. So this Lush experience is ultimately about you welcoming in true receivership with money and with life, and doing it in a way that is fully supportive of the life you want to create, right? That is supportive of the ease, peace, and pleasure that you want to invite in, right? We're not here to hustle to make money. We are not here to push or force or to extract from ourselves and from others. We are here to be in devotional relationship with money, with our desires, with what we want to create, and be in reciprocity, right, with the abundance all around us and inside of us. And so these 3 days are really pillars of how we do the nervous system work in order to increase your capacity to receive that, right? And yesterday, what we did is we looked at your relationship with money. How does your body actually feel in relationship? Not what we consciously think about money, because those are two different things, right? How does our body actually feel in relationship with money? And then how does our body feel in relationship with the amount of money that we want to welcome in? And the reason I even supported all of you to calibrate to the difference between those two yesterday is because our relationship with money is one aspect that our nervous system is reacting to. And then another aspect is the amount of money that we're holding, right? One thing is holding 5K per month, but another thing is holding 50 or 80K, right, per month. Those are two very different nervous system capacity levels. And when we desire something consciously, we want to look at what is the gap between my conscious desire and between where my nervous system capacity feels safe to actually hold that, right? And what we often see in the coaching industry is we see big money celebrations and we see all of the expansion that comes with that and all of the beauty. And that is true. There's so much joy and beauty in getting to receive what we've been working towards. And every level of receivership that you want to welcome in inevitably invites you into a deeper space of leadership within yourself. There is both an invitation for you to become more expressed, for you to be more of who you are in the world, for you to feel safe to be that version of self in the world. And there's also an invitation for you to learn how to hold all of the leadership initiations that inevitably come with receiving more and more money. And what does it mean for you to be a steward of money? Right? When we're looking at receiving, 10, 50, 80, 100K months, whatever your desire is, there is a reciprocal level of leadership that you are being invited into there that is actually asking you to hold yourself, others, and money from a deep place of regulation. And so everything that is underneath that 50K month or that 100K month, whatever you're calling in, there's also a level at which you are being invited to step into the space. And so when we're looking at what is the gap between where you are now in your business and where you desire to be, some of it is for sure safety with money, feeling really luscious to receive more money. And some of it is about that relational dance with money. And the other piece of it is, how safe do I feel to be who I am? How safe do I feel to show up in some of the challenge that presents itself? Excuse me. So if you'll notice, when I drop you into your body at the beginning, one of the pieces that I really highlight is the way that you are holding both expansion and groundedness in the same space. And one of the things that we practice inside of these nervous system activations is your awareness of your capacity to hold the both and, your capacity to hold both your contraction and your expansion in the same place. And when we talk about nervous system capacity to receive something, we are talking about your capacity to hold contraction and expansion at the same time. And one of the things that we are very automatic to do, because we're human beings and that's how we kind of work, is we really tend to anchor into our contraction. We tend to anchor into the things that are not working. We tend to anchor into some of the past nervous system imprints. And it's because our nervous system is really habituated into that, right? Both through, the way that we think about things, through the way that we are conditioned in our society to work and to be. All of those things kind of play a factor, but we're really conditioned to be existing in contraction and discomfort. And part of what we want to actually nurture in the nervous system is we want to nurture our capacity to be with discomfort from a regulated place, not from a reaction place. And we want to invite in more and more capacity to hold the goodness that we're welcoming in, right? To hold the ease, peace, and pleasure. And day 3 is all about that. We're calibrating your body to that expansion tomorrow. But today, what I want to talk about is your identity. And the way that I titled this day is the Wealth Identity Matrix. And I want to talk about, what does it mean for you individually to be wealthy, inside and out, right? When I say wealth, I'm looking at a very holistic expression of wealth. It means whatever that means to you on the material realm, and whatever that means to you in your internal landscape, right? Because money without our internal world blooming at the same time is not wealth to me, right? And that's what we're actually talking about here when it comes to, creating through our nervous system. So if you haven't tuned into some of the questions that I sent, that's totally fine. But I want you to tune into, for a moment, what would it mean for you to be truly wealthy? What does that look like in material form? What do you have? What are you receiving in money and all of the other things? How are you expressing that wealth? And what does it look like for you in your internal landscape? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing inside of that? The reason this is so important for you to define for yourself is because we have a lot of, pictures of what it means to be wealthy that come from social media, society, right? And we have this like fixed concept of that. And you might even tune into, what is your own concept of what it means to be wealthy? Like, what do you assume about someone who has wealth? What comes up for you? And just think about that. Are there, do you assume certain things about people who are wealthy? Does it have to look a certain way? What is the way that wealth is traditionally expressed? And what comes up in that space? To me, this work is about liberating our nervous system. It's not about fitting into another box of what it means to be wealthy. And this is why identity work is so important within this, because often what tends to happen is we kind of have this idea of what it means to be wealthy because we've seen different examples of it. And it often doesn't quite align with actually who we want to be inside of that, right? And so what can happen in that space is we either judge the hell out of wealthiness and rich people, and there's a lot of societal stories around that and a lot of wounding. And what can also happen is I don't see myself in that. Like, I don't see myself in this person. And if I can't see myself in what wealth means, then I must not be the kind of person that can receive that, right? We tend to other ourselves in the space. Like, oh, I'm not the kind of person that gets to have that because that's not what I look like, or that's not what maybe matters to me, right? We definitely see expressions of wealth that are like Chanel purses and fancy cars and mansion houses, and that's beautiful. Like, that can be someone's expression of wealth. But for someone else, it might be like being able to stay in their PJs all day and like not changing anything about what brand you're shopping, right? I tend to find that people just become more of who they are with more money, right? And so it's not that you're going to change who you are as a person, it's that you are going to have the freedom to create more of what you already have and more of what you already really love, right? So if you love camping barefoot in the forest, like, you're not all of a sudden going to start buying Chanel purses if that's not your thing. And so it's really important for us to understand, like, what is my individual expression of what it means to be wealthy? Because whatever that is, you get to create that. And we want to step out of othering ourselves from all those people that get to have the thing. And I'm sure, like, whether or not you've felt like, oh, Anna has all of these things and I could never do that because of X, Y, and Z, right? We create the reasons why we can't have something that we see externally that maybe we desire. But this work is ultimately about revealing more of who you are and letting the frequency of that actually allow you to receive more of that, right? The more that you are yourself, the more easily money is going to flow to you. And so we are in the process of liberating your nervous system to be able to define wealth for yourself, to be able to define who you want to be in that space. And I know for a lot of women, there can be a lot of things that show up about wealth, about power. Money and power are really interconnected with one another. And we have a complex relationship with power because power has historically been used against us. And this is especially true for women of color, right? And different identities that we hold depending on our experiences and where we come from and what we look like, right? And so there's a lot of complexity with some of this identity work because we're restructuring who gets to hold money in this society and what that looks like. And so there's a lot of crunchiness that can come up in our nervous system around holding more wealth and more money. And what does that mean? Does that make me a bad person? Right? Like, who am I when I'm holding more money? And a lot can get triggered here. One of the most like predominant things that I hear from women is like, I'm afraid that if I receive all of this money, I'm going to be irresponsible with it. That is the number one thing that I hear from women in particular. And why does that come up? Because we've been told for a very long time that we actually can't hold money, and we haven't held money historically, right? And so that is all etched into our nervous system. And it's often regardless of even positive personal experiences that we've had in our family unit. It's just something that can show up very individually for women in particular. I'm irresponsible with money, and therefore I don't have the capacity to hold this much. And so when we don't believe we have the capacity to hold it, when we don't trust ourselves to steward money, we are going to close ourselves off unconsciously to holding more of it, right? And this, I see this showing up even when women are welcoming in tons of money. There is something around holding a lot of money that has a lot of complexity in the nervous system because of power, because of identity, and who we believe ourselves to be when we hold that money. So I want to invite you to really ask yourself honestly, like, what am I afraid of if I hold a lot of money? Am I afraid of turning into someone different? Am I afraid of being bad? Like, what does this even mean for me on a generational level for me to hold more money and receive more of it? And the parts of you that come up that feel like, oh, this just isn't me. This isn't who I can be in the world. Those are the parts we get to tend to here and start to understand our identity from more of a depth perspective. We make a lot of judgments around wealth and richness for a lot of different reasons. And money has been used and stewarded in horrible ways in this world. And we are in the process of reclaiming that, right? My belief is that when good people, incredible women, have access to money and hold more money, we actually get to weave a very different kind of story. We get to put power in the hands of folks who haven't had it traditionally. And so there's a really powerful rewriting experience, both on a generational level and on an individual level, of what does it mean for me to hold and steward money? What are the values that I have when it comes to stewarding money in my life, within my community, within my business? And how can I claim that as this is who I am when I hold wealth? This is how I uphold my values. This is how I get to receive and how I get to impact generations to receive as a result. And let yourself really claim the power of all of that, because that is so powerful. And when you think about identity, like even think about the identities that you currently hold. Your identity as a mom, if you're a mom, your identity as a woman or a man. Like, what are all the identity places as a friend, as the daughter, right? When you think about all of those different identities that we hold as entrepreneur, there are rules that come with every one of those identities, right? There are rules for what does it mean for a mom to spend money? right? What does it mean for a mom to receive? Gosh, there's a shit ton of guilt and shame associated with it, right? There's a lot of like, it's not safe to do that. I have to always be with my child, right? I have to sacrifice all of these things. I actually can't receive until my child receives, right? There's so many receivership pieces that even come up with that identity. And then we think about identity of woman, like, what are the rules that we have around receivership as women? What are the rules that we have around receivership as a partner in our relationship? And all of the identities that you hold contain different rules that are literally etched into your nervous system. Like, there are ways that we don't feel safe to open up and receive inside of those relationships, right? What does it mean for me to actually receive from my partner and to not always have to feel like I'm doing all of the things and multitasking, right? And taking care of all of it and holding all of it. Because traditionally women are trained into that. Like, we're great multitaskers. We hold all of it, right? And so this is the ways that we've been conditioned into woman, into man, into mother in our society, right? And those are the things that play out in our nervous system when it comes to holding more money, receiving more money. And when we do the healing and expansion work in the nervous system, what we're actually doing is we're changing the rules. We're changing the rules that we've inherited. And they might not be rules that you even agree with. Like, you might be someone who's like really leading their life completely, opposed to any of the rules that are unconscious. And yet your body and your nervous system might still be reacting from them, because this is a very real patterning that we've just been raised in, that we consume in our environment, right? So when we look at the rules that are currently connected to our identities, we are looking at liberating our nervous system and creating different rules. Like, you literally get to set your own rule for what it means for you to be a mom who holds wealth, for what it means for you to be a woman who holds more wealth. Whatever the identity is, we get to break down those rules, and you get to come up with new ones that your body is on board with. And so that is one aspect of the work. And so what we're doing is we're actually deepening and refining your identities that you hold. And one of the things I want us to acknowledge in this space is that we have a lot of different parts inside of us. And this is something that we attune to inside of the nervous system work. But often what we do is we kind of attach ourselves to one particular part, and we think that we are just that part. Sometimes we also over-identify with just one identity. But the truth is we are complex human beings. We have multiple parts. We have multiple identities. We are multidimensional, and that is a beautiful thing. And we want to embrace that about ourselves, right? And so this invitation to hold the both and within us is not only about holding, contraction and expansion at the same time, which we want to build the nervous system capacity for, but it's also our capacity to hold the complexity of who we are, the nuance of what shows up in the space, because you are going to need to know and be open to the nuance of everything when you hold a lot of money, to be able to make really empowered decisions for yourself. And so you can look at it as like piece of a pie. There's a piece of a pie that has all of these different parts of you, the anxious part, the expanded part, the doubt part, the successful part. There's one piece of the pie. And then there's another piece of like all of these identities that you hold in the world and how people perceive you based off of those identities. And even how you think of yourself based off that identity, right? And so we are reconstructing the pie chart in each of those areas and increasing our nervous system capacity to be with all of it, to be with the complexity and sometimes the paradox of holding different identities and the paradox of holding new identities that we're creating in the world that don't feed into certain stereotypes. And actually building our capacity to hold the fact that we will most likely be judged for it. We might be rejected for it, right? And we're going to have people who come up to us and say, "How dare you?" And it's because we are stepping out of the box of what people assume about that particular identity. And people get real upset when that happens, which doesn't mean anything about you. It's just a reflection of something that's getting triggered and then something that's happening on that social level, right? We get to be both in ownership of our integrity and also in knowing that when we step out of any kind of box, people aren't always going to be happy with that. Just like when we create boundaries, not everyone's going to be on board with it. But it doesn't mean that the boundary is wrong, and it doesn't mean that you are wrong for the way that you are stepping into the world. And the number one thing that I see behind the scenes where I'm supporting women to grow, multi 5-figure to 6-figure a month businesses, the number one thing that shows up, I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of being called out. I'm afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of being me. Because every level of leadership that you're stepping into is ultimately inviting you to be more expressed, to be more visible, to be more seen. And it is going to have people judging you, potentially posting things about you. Who knows? Like, maybe not. But it's less about how can I avoid that and thinking, oh, that's not going to happen. But it's more about, well, am I capable of holding that if and when it happens? Right? Because if your nervous system is prepared and feels in its capacity to hold it, you will also feel in your capacity to receive at that level too. And this isn't about anticipating bad things or anything like that. This is just about acknowledging that when we become more of who we are, when we express identity in a way that people don't agree with, there's going to be people who don't like it. And so how do we hold people's criticism, people's feedback, right? How do we hold like the discomfort of some of the things that are going to arise inside of us? And I want to like drop this in for you. A year and a half ago, I wouldn't have had the capacity to hold this amount of people inside of a program. We've had over 200 people register, people showing up live. Like, I wouldn't have had the capacity because there were parts of me that were like, oh my gosh, what if somebody doesn't really agree with what I say about money? What if this person doesn't like me? What if this mentor like calls me out? Like, whatever the storyline is, if we're scared of showing ourselves and saying the thing that we really believe in, we don't give anyone an opportunity to see us. And so if we're not giving someone an opportunity to see us, how are we inviting in the clients who are meant for us? How is that then translating to the money that we desire to receive? Right. And so there's nuance and complexity here, but any kind of money calibration to 50, 100K, whatever it is, ultimately holds a deeper identity of self, a redefinition of the identities that you hold, and a powerful reclamation of who you get to be in the world. And knowing that you are capable of holding rejection and judgment, and that's okay. Like, it's okay for people to not like you. It's okay for people to judge you. It's going to happen one way or another, right? And you have the capacity to hold it no matter what. It doesn't mean that it's going to feel great. You might feel hurt and all of those things because you're human, but you have the capacity to hold it, right? And that requires access to your own power, conviction, and ability to regulate. That's all nervous system stuff, right? And so one of the beautiful things that happens through nervous system work when we're calibrating to a certain amount, and we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, where when we talk about money, we're actually really touching into some base level survival stuff in our nervous system, because our society is set up that if we don't have money, we end up on the street, right? And so money triggers some of our base level survival aspects. And it triggers not only safety and security on a very, like providing for our basic needs level, but also safety and security with who we are, right? Lovability, acceptance, all of those things come into the picture. And so what we're really doing when we're calibrating to money and working with money is we're actually liberating parts of us that don't feel safe to be seen, parts of us that haven't been loved, that haven't felt loved, that have felt rejected. There's relational wounding that has happened on some level. And it's why we take a relational approach with this work, because we heal in relationship, right? Nervous system heals in relationship. We're really used to healing individually in our little corner, and that can be great to a certain extent, but relational healing is what allows us to experience healing in motion, right? To apply the things that we are shifting inside of our nervous systems. And so what you're going to find is that when we do this work, there's relational wounding that comes up here. And that is so tender. That is so tender. But your capacity to hold that within yourself is what builds your capacity, right? Because you get to hold yourself really powerfully and beautifully and tend to those parts and build that regulation capacity in the nervous system. So this work is neither about drowning in the shadow, and it's not about like chasing the light and the expansion. It is about just learning to hold both and letting, just like you witnessed on day one, letting your nervous system pendulum between the contraction and the expansion. And the more we pendulum, the more we like anchor into that expansion, and the more that we can hold that, right? We can hold that expansion, we can hold that quote unquote frequency, if you will. And so what I want us to anchor in here is when you build nervous system capacity to hold money, to receive money, in energetic terms, it translates to frequency, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you're feeling bad one day or feeling good the next day. It has to do just about your capacity to hold yourself and hold the money. And you can feel whatever you want to feel, be whoever you want to be fully human, and still receive exactly what you desire. There are no rules to receiving money. Like, you just get to receive it because you want it. But your nervous system needs to feel safe enough to receive it. And so when I'm inviting you into this wealth identity matrix work, I'm inviting you to look at all of the unconscious rules that you have around receivership, around who you have to be to make the money. I'm inviting you to look at the judgments that you might have of other people who hold a lot of money. And, look at, if I'm judging this person, is there maybe like a deeper desire that's here for me of what I want in my own wealth expression? And then I'm also inviting you to look at, what is my actual leadership capacity? Like, if I'm saying that I want 50K months in my business, how am I within myself? Do I feel like I'm in capacity with myself to hold that? How am I showing up for that in my business? Are my actions lining up? Are my decisions lining up? Right? And this isn't about like shaming yourself or anything like that. It's just about recognizing this is the gap. This is where I'm being initiated and invited into something. And knowing that whatever you want to receive is yours. Like, this isn't a question of, can I receive it? It's an invitation into, who am I willing to become to receive what I desire to receive? And it's not about becoming anyone else. It's actually just about becoming more you, becoming the more integrated you. So you don't have to look like Amanda Francis. Like, you don't have to look like anybody that you see in the coaching world. You get to just be yourself, do your thing, and be more expressed in that. Feel safe to voice yourself out in the world. And so this is the wealth identity piece that we are invited into. And what is so fun about this work is you can try on different identities to see how they feel. You can try on different expressions of yourself to see what emerges. One thing that I have learned from this work, or one thing that I've actually witnessed within myself, is I shift identity, I shift my expression so quickly when I do this work. I literally changed my entire wardrobe because what I wore like the year before just isn't matching who I am now. And it's just a more expressed version of me. And I'm not saying you don't have to change your wardrobe. Like, this is just like the external expression of how that work is anchoring itself in. I am attracted to different kinds of things, both business-wise and in my personal life. Like, I'm literally shifting so quickly and evolving even how I speak and communicate. And you can even see it on my podcast. If you listen to earlier episodes on my podcast versus more recent ones, you can probably notice a different kind of cadence to my voice, a different kind of space taking that I'm doing inside of the podcast itself. Like, there are these different ways that I witness myself and notice, wow, like, I don't feel like I'm even the person that I was 2 years ago. And it's not that I'm not myself. It's actually because I'm more of who I am, right? I say what I think. I'm convicted in my beliefs, right? I'm anchored into my power. And I feel safe to receive judgment and criticism and all of the things. And I'm always stepping into being more and more safe with more of that. So, in today's activation, we are going to be working with identity, specifically your identity, and looking at what is your wealth identity expression and what are the parts of you that show up inside of that space, and what are the contractions with that? What are the expansions with that? And then supporting your nervous system to unwind from the places where it's feeling stuck with really integrating your authentic expression and claiming what you really want. I think one of the things that I witnessed the most about this work is people step into a container like nectar with me and they start to reveal all of these hidden desires. What we desire, the things that we find to be forbidden, like, oh, I shouldn't want that, or I shouldn't give this to myself, or that feels like too much, or I'm going to be too much. Those things are actually communicating to you, like, this is how I desire to be expressed, whether it's a Chanel purse or whether it's like, I want to speak this out into the room. I shouldn't desire. Those are the rules. Like, any shouldn'ts are rules that have been superimposed on you. And I want you to reconsider them. If you're saying I shouldn't do something, ask yourself, where does that come from? And is that actually true for what I desire to do and to receive in my life? And the more that you reveal your truest desires, because we deny our desires to ourselves all the time, the more you actually reveal the pathway to receiving what you want. Desires are divine communications, right? Your being is inherently abundant. And what we're doing is we're integrating parts of you that don't feel safe to actually claim that abundance for yourself. So inside of this, you might even recognize, gosh, I have these like desires that I even haven't claimed yet. I'm seeing this version of myself who is holding that amount of money, and the way that she's expressing her wealth is so different. And take all this with a grain of salt. Like sometimes the person who shows up is just like the embodiment of what we perceive about wealth. But like, be in the space of curiosity. Maybe there's something here for you. Maybe there's a desire here that wants to be claimed for you to anchor into this new level of expression of identity. And one of the things that I love doing with this work is I love playing with that in my everyday life. Like if I feel an edge about, walking to, I don't know, going into the Cartier store, whatever. If I feel an edge around that, like, oh, I don't belong there, or I don't have the money for that, or I wonder what my mom is going to think if I go in there. That's a beautiful edge for you to invite yourself into if you desire that for you. Like, how can you let your body be exposed to things that you typically find are forbidden to you because of either how much money you have or how you perceive someone's going to judge you, or even how you're judging yourself, right? And so there's these beautiful invitations in our everyday where we get to stretch our capacity with our desires. And that in and of itself is a really powerful nervous system activator of who we are becoming. You don't have to buy a $3,000 necklace to do that, but you can walk into the store, or you can buy the necklace. Like, it's up to you, right? And there's lots of different expressions of how we get to play with that in our everyday. Like, maybe you're not in capacity to like spend the entire day at the spa and like spend $500. Maybe you are, and maybe that's an edge for you to even spend that much money on yourself. I find this to be true even for women who can, spend a lot of money on things. They maybe don't spend it on themselves. They spend it on business expenses, but they kind of cower away from spending it on their personal desires. There are all of these ways where desire edges show up in different capacities. And there's an opportunity for you to do the work in the nervous system live, like in your lived reality, to notice how that can be invited in to some level. And so notice that as well. Where are my desire edges? Where do I forbid myself certain things? And how can I actually even titrate my way into giving more of that to myself? Right? An hour at the spa, or walking into a Cartier store, like whatever it is. So we're about to enter into the activation experience. And after the activation experience, we'll have a little bit of time to integrate, and then I'll open up the space for Q&A. Just like I said yesterday, I just want to preface the work. If you weren't here yesterday, I always like to say these pieces before we drop into a somatic experience. I want to invite you to be curious and open. This work is going to take you into avenues that you can't predict. And that's the whole point, is we're opening up, your body in the field of possibility to see what shows up. Because we can consciously understand something, we can consciously create something, but what happens when we step into the field? What opens itself up in our bodies in the field? And so really encouraging you to approach this from a place of play and curiosity. Number two, Our bodies hold imprints from the past, imprints from the future that we're creating. And the intention of these experiences in a group environment is never to trigger something really traumatic for you. But I also can't predict where your body goes because I'm not in every person's experience here. And so if you are experiencing some kind of like distress level, I like to think of it as between 1 and 10. 10 is like, I'm having an anxiety attack, I'm going out of my body. I wouldn't want you to be going past a 5 level of distress with anything. Again, this isn't meant to trigger anything, but if it does, and you're feeling pretty activated and triggered, I want to invite you to open your eyes, ground yourself into the present moment, feel sensation, look around the room, orient yourself, and let your body come back down to 1 or 2 level of activation, and then see if you can re-engage in the experience with us. Anything that doesn't feel right in your body, please don't do. You are in control the entire time. So if I'm cueing you into something and you're like, that doesn't feel right, don't do it. Let yourself flow with what feels true for you and your body. I will, at a certain point, tell you to place the palms of your hands face down onto the left and the right thigh. You can also put it here on the side. The whole intention is for you to just stimulate the left and the right side of the body. And I'm going to cue you to tap slowly and gently. So refrain from going quick or hard. Just rhythmic, slow tapping like this. And the times that I'll cue you to do this is in moments where you are feeling expansion in the body. So define what expansion means for you from a felt sense. Is it tingling? Is it lightness? Is it opening in your body? When you're feeling those things, I'm going to be cueing you to tap. And if in your own experience, you're feeling expansion, please feel free to tap outside of what I'm cueing you into. Because what I'm wanting to do is to reinforce that kind of regulation with the expansion. So we're embedding that in your nervous system. And what I want to avoid is us embedding any of the contraction. So I'll tell you to stop tapping when we're tuning into the contracted parts. And so just be aware of like how that's penduluming in your own body, because I'm going to be prompting it at a certain rhythm, but that might not be in rhythm with your own body. And so just be aware. If you're in contraction, don't tap. If you're in expansion, tap. And if you're really focused on the contraction, that's totally fine. Every person's experience here is going to be different depending on what's going on in your individual nervous system. If the contraction is really prevalent, just stay with it. Provided it's need, I'm going to cue you into that. It's totally perfect and fine, whatever presents itself here. It's what needs to happen in your nervous system right now for this stage of your growth. Okay. So let's drop in and journey together. If you are someone that typically doesn't do well with sitting in meditation, that is a-okay. You can stand up, you can move, you can walk, like whatever's going to work for your own body. Meditation isn't always nervous system friendly for everyone. And so there's different ways of adapting this to what feels right for you and your nervous system. So you can either sit or stand. You can even sit and do like slight movement if you need some movement while you focus in. The intention here is for you to focus on the felt sense experience, feel it in your body. That's where I'm wanting to invite you. So as long as you can do that, you can be moving, doing whatever. Okay, let me just take a sip of water. And then as you feel comfortable, go ahead and close the eyes And begin to notice and attune to the rhythm of the breath moving through you. Connect back with the roots of you. Noticing the energy flowing in through the roots, grounding your body into the present moment. And then connecting with the crown and the light flowing in through the crown. Just feeling that light opening and expanding your body. And feeling yourself holding both here. Noticing the way that your body is settling into both the groundedness and the expansion here. And then directing your attention to your heart center. Breathe into the heart. And let's set the intention of you liberating the most expressed and embodied wealth identity, allowing that self to integrate into your nervous system in the now. And hold that intention in the heart. And then seal it there on the next exhale. And now finding the space that's just 2 fingertips below the belly button and about a finger length into the body. Just visualize a golden egg resting in that space. Breathe into this golden egg. About 2 fingertips below the belly button and about a finger length into the body. And as you breathe into this golden egg, just notice any sensations as you breathe. Feel the energy expanding with each breath. And sense this golden glow expanding more and more as you breathe. Just noticing the way that your body is holding this expansion. Feeling this portal in your body opening itself up. This portal that leads into your limitlessness. And then on the next exhale, go ahead and drop your awareness into that golden egg, opening the portal into your limitlessness. Then see and feel yourself in this field of possibility, where anything can be created, healed, and received. Notice what it's like to be here with all of this possibility around you. Breathing into the edges of your skin. Noticing your lightness of being. And then from this space, I want you to call in this version of you that's holding the amount of money that you desire to hold in your business. Call her into the space. And see her right in front of you. Maybe even sitting next to you. And notice what she looks like. Notice how your body feels in relationship with her. Notice what she's wearing, the way that she's holding herself. What do you notice about her? And simply observe. What are the desires that she has? And notice if any words come through as you connect with her. And now come back into connection with your body in relationship with this version of you. How does your body feel in connection? Notice any places of expansion, attuning to the sensations of that. And then notice any places of contraction and attune to the sensations of that. And if you notice expansion and you're able to anchor into that sensation, I want to invite you to place the palms of the hands face down into the left and the right thigh. And as you focus on the felt sense of that expansion, just allow yourself to tap left to right, slowly and gently, focusing on the expansion in the body, letting it lead you. And keep tapping with that expansion. Noticing how the sensation grows and develops as you tune in. And then pausing the tapping. Go ahead and look back at this version of yourself. And notice how your body feels now. Tune into any contraction that's showing up, any kind of tension, tightness, heaviness, perhaps even numbness if it's present. And observe. Just observe the felt sense of that. And then, as if you are sitting right next to that contraction in that part, ask it who it is and what does it need? What do you need? You might hear a word, might receive an image. Just notice the first thing that arises. And then placing your hand wherever that contraction is. I want to invite you to inhale that need, that quality. It might be safety, it might be love. It might be being seen, whatever it is. Inhale it through the crown center and feel it coming in through the crown, down the arm, all the way into your hand and fingertips where you're holding that contraction. And just feel what it's like for that part to receive this need. Staying with it. Feeling that safety or love, whatever the need is, holding that part. And as that feels complete, notice how your body feels now. Notice if anything has shifted about this part, if anything's moved. And if you're feeling called to still stay present with a part and to provide that need, I want to encourage you to do that. And now take a moment to connect back with this wealthy version of you that's holding more money, holding more of herself, holding more of her desires. And notice what comes through now. What are you noticing here? And then tune into your body. How is your body responding to her in this moment? Is it the same? Is it different? Notice if you feel any expansion, whether there's even more expansion here or a different kind of expansion. And allow yourself to focus on the felt sense of that in your body. Notice where it is. Notice the texture and the color of that expansion. And bringing the palms of your hands face down onto the left and the right thigh. Let yourself tap slowly and gently from left to right as you focus on the felt sense of that expansion. Letting it lead you. And just feel what it's like to hold that expansion in your body. Just sensing that capacity growing, feeling yourself holding it. Tapping slowly from left to right with whatever expansion you're feeling. And then as you're ready, go ahead and pause the tapping and connect back with this version of self. What's showing up for you now? And I want to invite you to ask her, what am I being invited to claim to embody you in the now? Is there a part of me that I need to accept? Is there a desire I need to own? Is there a way that I'm being invited to lead and show up? To hold this money, to hold this life, to hold this wealth? Notice what comes through. And then from this place, I just want you to envision this version of yourself giving you a gift. This can be an object, or it might be that she's sending you energy, some kind of activation into your body. She's handing you a gift, something that she wants you to have. As a way to integrate her, as a way to start living as her in the now. A reminder of that. And just notice what she gives to you. Notice what you are receiving from her here. And whether it was an object or an energy or a quality, whatever she gave to you, I want to invite you to inhale that in through the root center, feeling yourself receiving that. Letting that activate and ignite. Letting yourself hold that gift. Because she's already inside of you now, waiting to emerge, waiting to be in the now. And feel your body expanding around that, allowing it to settle in. Breathing into the cosmic egg as you receive it, just sensing that energy, really holding that in you. You are capable. You are in capacity to receive this. Let yourself feel it in your body now. And if you're feeling expansion with this, I want to invite you to tap here slowly from left to right. Letting that receiving energy ground itself into your roots. Tapping slowly, left to right with that sensation. And then as that feels complete, I want to invite you to inhale into the heart. And tap into any genuine gratitude that you feel for whatever was received here. For the parts of you that are inviting you to awaken them, to claim them. Any gratitude for everything that's inevitable for you to receive. This version of you already exists. And she's waiting for you to step in. Notice whatever feels true for you to express gratitude for here and hold it in the heart center. Sealing it on the next exhale. And then taking a moment to just bow and express gratitude to this version of you for guiding you. She's living and breathing in your body, and you can access her at any moment. And then coming back into connection with your feet against the earth, noticing the breath moving through you. And then opening your eyes as you're ready. Just taking a look around your room, situating yourself in the present moment. And as you're ready, coming back into connection with me here. So I'd love for you to just take a moment to integrate whatever you received here. You might write it down, journal it out. You can share it in the comments. Sounds like all of you had some really powerful experiences. Just beautiful. I received safety. Yeah. A microphone. Ooh, sounds like you're meant to be speaking. Confidence and ease, peace, beautiful. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and I encourage you to step into the Facebook community and even share all of these pieces. It can be really powerful to be witnessed. Orgasmic energy, amazing. Yes. Beautiful. So one of the things that I just want us to anchor into with this is this version of you exists. Like, we're not making any of this up. Like, this is on a timeline, right? And the cool thing about nervous system work is like we get to play on different timelines and create resonance with a certain timeline, right? There's multiple possibilities of who we can be, where we can be, what we can be receiving. And none of them are good or bad, wrong or right. It's just dependent on what is true for you and what you desire. And when your nervous system capacity is on board with that version of you and you're calibrating to it, it's inevitable. And so I really want you to anchor into the knowing that this is inevitable when I allow myself to rise into that nervous system capacity. And that is asking several things from you. It's asking you for you to build that nervous system capacity actively in a targeted way, just like we've been doing. And it's also asking you to follow it up. It's asking you to follow it up with action steps, with decisions. And all of those things are going to be pretty scary. They're going to be contracting to your nervous system because your nervous system is a survival response, right? And we can utilize it in really beautiful ways. Like we can use the power of the nervous system to create space for so much goodness, to create space for you receiving your desires. And it's still a survival response. So if we are getting up on stage to talk to a bunch of people, your nervous system is going to communicate, I'm about to die right now, right? That's not actually what's going to happen, but that is what's happening. Like, that's the reason why we don't make decisions or take actions that our body is telling us to take, right? And so it's up to you to step into the leadership capacity of the woman who's acknowledging, yeah, my nervous system is reacting here because I'm scared as hell about taking this next action or making this decision or speaking in the way that I meant to speak out in the world. And it's still safe enough for me to take the next step. Like, this is the place where we get to hold the both and. Like, we get to be scared and we still get to take powerful action that's in resonance with this version of self. And this is literally how I've, created anything that I've created. Like, the reason why I was able to step into $500,000 year is because I made some really scary choices. I said some really scary things. And I aligned with the version of me who was in her capacity to hold that. And so this work really requires us to be really honest with ourselves. Anything that you want, you will be able to weave your way into it. And I want you to let go of concepts of time when it comes to this work. Sometimes we're so focused on like, I want to prove this. I want to be validated in knowing that this is meant for me. But all of the validation that you need is like right here. It's in your body. You felt it today. Let that be the proof, right? When we start to look for proof of why something isn't working, we're going to find proof of why it's not working and why we can't have it, versus letting ourselves anchor into the knowing that it's inevitable when I choose it. It's inevitable when I anchor into the safety of receiving what I want to receive and letting yourself make movement. And there's really no bad or wrong decision. It's just going to open up another timeline and you still get to make your way into what you want to receive, right? So everything gets to be an invitation into rising into that version of you. And we don't even need to make a story around why are we still in this financial space, or why are we stuck here, or why are we the languaging of I'm somehow bad or wrong, or I'm doing something wrong, versus like, how am I being invited into myself more? How am I being invited to walk with my fear more and invite myself into my edges and not create meaning around it, not create meaning about who I am, or shame or guilt myself, or whatever it is, right? So every level of your receivership in business is unlocking a different kind of initiation and a different kind of invitation for you, as it relates to identity, as it relates to leadership, as it relates to capacity. And we're just looking at the places where there's a part of you that wants to be reclaimed. Often the parts of us that we suppress, we reject, we push away are the exact parts that want to be reclaimed and shown to the world, because it's part of your medicine. And those are the parts that we often resist the most, because we feel shame or some other strong emotion around the part. So yeah, get honest with yourself, like see where the capacity isn't matching the desire yet, and let your nervous system weave itself in that direction. Do the expansion work in the nervous system and then take action, right? Movement is required for healing and expansion. We're not just closed off in a room doing this work and then not implementing it when we step out of the room, right? What good is meditation if it's not actually creating peace in your life? So know that nervous system work is just as much about being with ourselves internally as it is being in motion externally. They are in relationship with each other. Let that ignite you. Can you let your desire be bigger than your fear? How can you allow your nervous system to anchor into the power of your desire and that fire burning inside of you? And honor that. Put more energy into it than you put energy into the fear that shows up. And fear is okay. Fear is normal. We're all going to have it. But let your desire lead you. Trust your desire. Trust yourself. Trust the way that your body is leading you. Because what we are activating here inside of your nervous system is the pathway, right? Just like yesterday, we paved the pathway for capacity with money, capacity for that level of receiving. We're paving the pathway for you to embody this version of self. And so from this moment on, you're going to be receiving body-based knowings about where that pathway is leading you. And the more that you can listen to that body-based knowing and keep going on that path, the more the self that you are now and the self that is already inside of you start to integrate and become here in the now. right? So listen. It's about listening, knowing the language of your body, taking action, being in motion with it, and continuing to calibrate and do this nervous system work. So I will end with the transmission of that here. We're just at about time, a little bit over. I am going to open it up to Q&A. If you want to type your question in the chat, I will answer some questions. If you have to leave, totally respect your time. Feel free to go and you can listen to the replay or ask your question in the Facebook community. And otherwise, I'm here for another half an hour or so to answer your questions, depending on how many there are. So I appreciate all of you for coming today. Thank you for being here. And please come live to day 3 if you're able. And I'd love to see you there. So let me see. Where do I start? How much of our collective energy do you feel during these containers? A lot. I definitely, at the end of the day, I feel the holding of everyone's energy. I feel your energy, but it's not as conscious for me. It's only my body feels it. So yeah, if you're a healer, if you're in attunement, if you're in relationship with the energy inside of your body and the energy with other people, you're always going to feel it in some way. Thank you, Brianna, for joining. Siobhan, yeah, feel free to unmute if you're driving and you can't type. Go for it.
Greetings. Hello. How are you? Yes, I am literally in the middle of a move from Texas to Georgia. Driving to Georgia right now. But my question was this, because I'm really trying to understand the whole nervous system. So when you speak about that, are you saying, like with the meditations and different things, that really the nervous system work is really us kind of tapping into that frequency of what it is that we desire? Is that kind of what it is, like us really kind of seeing ourselves as being the version of ourselves that we know that we can be? Is that the nervous system work that you speak of, or am I missing the mark here?
Yeah, I'm happy to explain that a little bit more. Thanks for asking the question, Siobhan. I appreciate it. So, nervous system work is it's connection with our bodies, it's connection with our senses, it's connection with movement, right? It's presence. There's a lot of things that nervous system work is. What we are doing in the field and like connecting with future self, the future version of us, like you can use that in a lot of different capacities. So, if you've ever done meditations from, probably any other coach who does like future self imagination weaving, it's essentially kind of tapping into the fact that, when we can imagine something, that's the reason why I create like vision boards, right? If we can imagine something, the invitation is that we can create it, right? If we let ourselves become aware of what is possible for us, then we open up that possibility. Versus if we don't ever imagine, a future that's different, if we don't ever imagine like a different kind of life, we won't be able to create it, right? Because we're not open to seeing it. The piece that I'm adding in here to powerful imagining of something is that we're bringing our body with us, right? Because what can happen when we're imagining something or thinking something, thinking quote unquote positive, right? Mindset. And this relates to imagining as well. If we're not inviting our body into the experience, then the nervous system, which is your nervous system governs how you are in the world, right? It governs your thoughts, it governs your movement, your breath, every single thing, how you carry yourself, right? The nervous system is what determines how you feel safe to move in the world, how you feel safe to express yourself, right? And so when we're combining imaging, like imagining something, with tuning into our bodies and letting our nervous systems actually feel safe and regulated there, right? Where our heartbeat isn't going at 120 miles an hour, where we're not sweating, where, we actually feel like this is possible for us. When we bring our body along with that, that is what actually creates the capacity for us to then create that forward, right? There's a difference between imagining something, saying something to yourself, and actually feeling that this is what I get to create. This is what my body feels safe to receive. And so whatever our nervous system feels safe with is what we welcome in. If our nervous system doesn't feel safe to access something, we're either consciously or unconsciously going to say no to that thing. And so it's through like interweaving the nervous system with some of the tools that we have typically used in the personal development industry in different ways, and really understanding how we can do that for our own unique nervous system, that then allows our body to get on board with that then makes the visualizations reality for us, right? Makes it a possibility, makes the things that we want to think, quote unquote, positively feel like truth in our bodies. And so that's where the nervous system comes in. And you can, tap into the power of the nervous system for all sorts of things. Like, people are using the nervous system to heal their relationships. People are using the nervous system to do this like money work, right? There's lots of different focuses with the nervous system. But when the nervous system isn't on board, we unconsciously repeat some of the same cycles in our life. And so this is about pattern shifting our nervous system imprints from the past. And this is about creating safety with what we want to welcome into the future, what I call like future nervous system imprints. Because we can consciously want the thing, we can consciously want ease, peace, and pleasure. But if our nervous system is like, I actually don't even know what ease, peace, and pleasure feels like, that equals unfamiliar to nervous system, that equals danger to nervous system. Something that's not familiar is dangerous. And this is a survival mechanism from, caveman days, where we had to have that capacity to fight, flight, freeze to survive. But that doesn't really apply so much in our everyday here. So we're learning how to both honor the powerful function that the nervous system has to protect us, but also understand when it's stepping into places where we actually don't need to be protected, and how to like work with our protections in order to step into thrival, not just survival. So I hope that answered it. With the whole capacity to receive, hold, where does healthy masculine energy play a role in this? I'm trying to find a harmony. Yeah, it's interesting for me to kind of like define things through like healthy masculine energy. Like, what I would say is healthy masculine energy is we have structures, we have holding containers, we feel safe to step into some of those more like organizational, admin, structural components of both like money, investing, business, all of it. And of course, we all have wounding with what we traditionally call the masculine energy, or we have discomfort with it. Like, I know I'm like super great at flowing, But if you ask me to balance out my checkbook, I'm like, hell no. I feel a freeze response around that. And so actually a lot of my work has been around how do I feel really juicy around creating structure? And how do I feel really great about, really stewarding my money and holding it? And that will show up in your nervous system. At a certain level of your growth, it'll start to unlock itself. So what I've found to be true, and I'll just share it from my own behind the scenes, like for me to go from like 10K months to 50K months within 4 months, I had to build some serious structure into my business. I had to hire a team. I had to like really embrace the organizational masculine energy of the behind the scenes of business growth. And I didn't have to intentionally step in and be like, I need to shift my energy with the masculine. It's just something that naturally happened through me calibrating to a specific amount in my business, right? So the harmony just kind of happens through the calibration to the amount. Like the amount of money that we're talking about, like, yeah, it's money, but it represents a lot more. Like that amount of money represents who you are as a leader, the structures and systems that you have in your business, team members, your leadership capacity. It's like all the things. And so whatever we're afraid of holding with that specific frequency of money is going to show itself up. It's going to show itself in the space in your body and be worked through, right? Be collapsed. So within 4 months, I literally built out like my business capacity in the back end to hold a lot more people by hiring people, right? By getting comfortable with like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but like, let's figure this out. Like, let's make it work. Let's show up as a leader at that level, right? And so you don't have to like consciously try to find the harmony. You'll just kind of like know the next step. And of course, like guidance is helpful in that. Like, if you're building a business of that size, to have like mentorship as well. But that was definitely part of it for me, but it'll just naturally unlock itself. So when I said like you'll start to get inspirations coming in for that level, that's what I mean. Like I literally was like, I got to hire an OBM and get shit going, because if I want to hold this level of growth, I better get serious with that and follow it up with action. I have this feeling like there's a level of work that's required to make more money. Like it won't take same energy and work I'm putting in now to make 50K months. Or is this an error in thinking? I mean, I think like any person's experience of holding 50K months and how much quote unquote work it takes is dependent on so many things. Like, yeah, there is going to be more work in a lot of senses. Like you're creating different programs, maybe you're managing team. Everyone has a little bit of a different product suite. So it's really going to be dependent on how you execute your programs. Like, how is your body of work meant to be expressed? It's not so much about like, how much work am I doing here? But it's more about, do I have the nervous system capacity to hold the work I'm being invited into from a place of ease, peace, and pleasure? Right? It's less about how much work and how does it feel for me to do the work and hold the work. And you can adjust your business in any which way. Like if you want to run your programs in a certain way and invite more ease, you can. It's all about like the calibration and how your work is meant to be expressed. So if your nervous system is freaking out about like, oh, how much work am I going to have to do? Well, I mean, I guess my question is like, are you calibrating it to your desire? Because for me, like stepping into my business and doing everything that I'm doing is because I desire to do it. Like I desire to create programs. I desire to serve my clients. I desire to coach. For me, it's never been about like how much work I'm not doing. It's like, am I doing what feeds my soul? And ultimately, that's the question. And so if you're doing work that feeds your soul and that feels activating and interesting to you and it's nourishing you, then, and you're doing it from like ease, peace, and pleasure, then, to me, that's what matters. And there's different ways of structuring programs depending on how much time and energy you want to be inside of your programs. And that also comes from like your nervous system comfortability with ease, peace, and pleasure. So everything can be tweaked to whatever level you desire. I see people holding 50K months who are in their business twice a week. I see people holding 50K months who are in their business 5 days a week, and it just depends on what you desire. How often did you do this when you first started? When I first started the money calibration work, I was probably doing it like at least 3 times a week, sometimes every day. What I invite everyone into with, doing this kind of work is figure out what consistency means for you. This isn't like, I have to do this every day or else I will not receive. Nope. Let yourself like just know, what does consistency look like for me? How do I show up in devotion to something? It's like, the analogy I'll use is going to the gym. If you want to pump, I don't even know the correct terminology because I don't do this, but like if you want to lift, yes, that's probably it. If you want to lift 100 pounds or 150, whatever your goal is, you are going to have to do reps over and over again in order to get to that capacity level. This is the same with nervous system work. To build capacity, you have to rinse and repeat and do your reps. Now, whether you go to the gym 3 times a week or 5 times a week, I would encourage you to tune into your own body's capacity for that, right? For some people, going to the gym 5 times a week is going to burn them out. Is going to burn their muscle down. It's actually good to have some like rest periods. And it might be best for you to do it 3 times a week. So just to tune it to your body, like, is my body feeling like I want to invite this in right now? Not from a place of like, does it always feel good, but more from a place of like, do I need a rest day to integrate? Because gyms, going to the gym doesn't always feel great. Golden egg wanted me to have more sex, feeling and receiving more pleasure. Yes, here for this. Pleasure energy. Yeah, so a lot of the reason why sex, pleasure, all of that is like it's opening and expanding our nervous system. And there's lots of different ways to experience pleasure. And one of the things that's happening when we're tapping into the golden egg is we're opening up that pleasure center in our body as well, and letting it feel more and more safe to hold more of that. What is the difference between a reasonable and unreasonable money goal? Are there any unreasonable money goals? As in, you mentioned 3 to 4 times your annual income. Is it reasonable to think of 5 times or 10xing it? How would we know? I don't think there's anything like reasonable and unreasonable is based off of your own perception. So even like labeling something as reasonable or unreasonable comes from our own vantage point of where we are. And my stance has always been like, just desire whatever you want to desire, whether it feels reasonable or unreasonable. And the space from which I 3 to 4 times my annual income didn't come from the place of like, this is unreasonable. It was just like, hey, this is what I desire to calibrate to. I'm just going to sit with that and calibrate to it in my body. And I trust when it's ready to land, it will land. And I'm not going to push myself into anything that doesn't feel in resonance with my body. I'm here to receive, and I trust in the timeline. So, the stage at which I created that kind of growth was I anchored into the desire to have a 7-figure year. And I was at like 20K months. Like, realistically, it was like, I got a ways to go. Like, I mean, you could say it was unreasonable, but that wasn't how I was making meaning out of it. I just honored what the desire was, where the desire landed, and I started calibrating to it. And I detached from when I was going to receive it. Could have been that year, could have been the year after, could be 5 years after that. Why does it matter if you're going to receive it anyway? So let yourself just follow the desire. And that's when you start to like quantum leap, because you're not attached or making meaning of whether or not you receive it. You're just honoring the desire and moving with the energy in your body. Every time I step deeper into my fullness energetically, my husband, who makes less money than me, for context, gets physically sick. Do you know why this could be? That's really interesting. I'm curious to know how he feels about you making more money than him. Like, what comes up for you relationally with that? There's a lot of couple dynamics because we're conditioned into men making more money and women making less money in the relationship. And so there's a lot of things that can show up in relationship with that just because we're conditioned into it. Even if consciously we're like, hey, I totally love the fact that my partner makes more money than me. I'm curious to know like what shows up for him emotionally with that. Is there something that is activating for him with that? And there's a lot around like men being the provider and women being the caretaker, and these roles that we've kind of been put into. And so that can bring up a lot for men, it can bring up a lot for women. Also just depending who you're in relationship with, like the energies that we assume inside of the relationship. So that's something to ask him about and notice what's showing up in his body and what's happening for him emotionally. How to do the meditations of 3 days, feeling it and choosing which one is better, or defining it so as not to sabotage yourself. Better defining it so as not to sabotage yourself. So, I mean, in terms of the 3 days, like what I'm inviting you into is these are the 3 pillars that I use inside of all of my containers with the work that I do within myself. And what I invite you to do is to engage with all of the 3 pillars in different ways. There's no, right or wrong here necessarily, but what I would recommend is that you're doing a money calibration to a specific amount on a regular basis. So like 30K months, 50K months, whatever it is. Because what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to get your nervous system habituated to that amount of money, right? We want repetition in your nervous system with that amount of money. And if there's any relational patterning with money that's showing up, that's where you would be really tapping into the relationship with money in particular. So I would say like day 1 is the more consistent practice I would invite you into. What I'm inviting you into today is something that I'm always untangling in one way or another, but I don't necessarily always do activations with a future version of myself, unless I'm like feeling really unclear on what is the pathway, where is the gap, where is my leadership inviting me into? And so I might do a calibration with that. And then with tomorrow's event, we're going to be calibrating to more ease, peace, and pleasure in the body. And that's just a constant for me. Like, for instance, during launches, I am putting extra pleasure, ease, and peace into my days because I'm holding more. Right. And so I'm building my nervous system capacity to hold this from ease, peace, and pleasure, and letting it feel easeful and good for me, letting it feel fun and playful, because that's how I show up as the best version of myself, the most empowered version of myself, where I speak the most clearly and where I'm most present in my body. And so it's something that we want to be inviting ourselves into all of the time as well through our pleasure practices. So I hope that that gives you kind of an idea. Why does it shock my nervous system when I change my mind about my desires? And how do I hold more spaces for when the calling shifts within me? So without knowing anything about you, my best guess is that there's maybe a part of you that's judging you changing your mind about your desires. And I actually see this a lot with manifesting generators. If you're into human design, manifesting generators tend to have like a lot of desires and they want to go a lot of different directions. And there can be a lot of judgment around that versus just letting yourself kind of accept wherever the desire is pulling you, but also letting yourself be devoted to something. Like there's a way that you can hold devotion for your desires and honor the fullness of your desires at the same time. So give yourself permission to have all the desires you want to have and just prioritize certain ones. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gogo. It's good to have you. What's your best feedback for shifting into expanding your soul business while still choosing to have a consistent full-time job? Expanding your soul business while still choosing to have a consistent, and how to balance the job if it's not my full passion and also very constrictive. Yeah, this is such a great question. I spoke a little bit about this yesterday in the Q&A, I believe. I think I did. When you're switching from a 9 to 5, it's a tricky balance. Ultimately, you kind of have to make the decision to leap into your business in whatever way feels safe enough for you. But what I would be doing in your nervous system is really calibrating to a specific amount in your business. And so if you're not making any income in your soul business, start with something like 2K a month, 1K a month, whatever it is. $100, whatever feels accessible to you in your body right now as it relates to your business. And just take the micro actions that resonate with that level of receiving. And what we want to do when we're starting a business like that is we want to like actually calibrate at smaller amounts, because the initial shift from a 9 to 5 to entrepreneur is a bit more of like a nervous system stretch for most people, because it's like a completely different way of receiving money. It's orienting you in a completely different way. You have to trust yourself at a completely different level. You have to be comfortable to be in the unknown. Like there's a lot of like nervous system triggers that happen in that particular space. And so just be gentle and patient with yourself. Like it's probably, gosh, in total time from the moment that I had a desire for a business to when I fully stepped into it, it took me probably like 2 years to actually like make the jump. And when I did it, I finally just got so fed up with being in my 9 to 5 that I just quit without any income in my other business and was just like, I'm going to waitress and figure it out because I can't deal with being at this 9 to 5 anymore. Like it's literally shutting my whole body down. And so sometimes your soul business is going to force you into that in so many ways. Other people make that transition gradually. But that wasn't me. So it's kind of like dancing with it back and forth and just starting small, focusing on one client, getting one client in, focusing on another, taking micro steps in that direction. I always thought that I would have to make the contraction go away so that I could expand and receive what I want. And that's not actually it. Yep. Exactly. It's not it. You don't have to make contractions go away. We don't have to deny our humanity in order to create money. Contractions are a natural entryway into our expansion. Something that I'm not leading you through in this group environment just because I stay away from doing inner child work here because of the trauma component. Like when we touch into inner children, it's like the wild, wild west. We don't know what's showing up in the body. But like when you actually get to the root of why you have some of these contractions, they really naturally lead you into the expansion. They lead you into the reclamation. So there's parts of us that are carrying heaviness from past things. And when we liberate those parts, it actually lands us into our capacity to hold more expansion. And so they're connected to each other. And when we deny our contraction, we're actually denying our expansion. And so they are interlinked with one another. And it's part of how nervous system capacity gets built with time. And you experienced it today, right? Can I tap into the contraction and the expansion at the same time? Like it can be safe for me to be in both places. Okay. All of these questions are awesome. And we're past the half hour. I would encourage you to just copy and paste whatever you asked me here that I didn't have a chance to answer and put it in the Facebook community. Just do it right now before we close out the meeting. Put it in there and I will step in and answer the questions in there. And yeah, I love interacting with all of you in that space. So day 3 is tomorrow, our final day, and I'm super excited about this one as well. I hope to see you all live, and thank you for being here. I appreciate your presence. Have a beautiful day.